Hey there, Miko here, back with yet another lesson, and here I want to take a look at this book. I've covered it before. It's been a while. It's been a while since I used it, to be honest. So it is the classic Thesaurus of Scales and Melodic Patterns by Nicholas Slominsky. So I'm not gonna go into detail of who he was or what it is, because I'm kind of assuming that most of you who are watching this, you're probably aware of this book, what it is, and you've seen it, or you might even have it. And if you do, you can bring it out and follow along here. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about how I use this book, what it's, how you can use it basically, and then I'll show you how you can use it to open up the diminished scale so that it's something bigger, which might seem like a contradiction since it's the diminished scale, but you'll see what I mean. But let's start off with just some basic stuff here. I'm gonna start on page, let's see, 51, where he divides an octave into 4 parts. So I'm not an expert of this, what he means by all these words, interpolation and all of what it is, but this is how I interpret it, or my take on it. If you take a note and you divide it into 4 parts, the octave into 4 parts, you get that, right? So I'm gonna do this from G. Everything in the book starts on C, but I'm gonna start on G because we need to create really large intervals or a large register, so I'm gonna start on G. If I split this octave into 4 equal parts, I get this, right? G, B flat, C sharp, E, G. And I can obviously keep going. And most of you are probably thinking, hang on, it's just a diminished arpeggio or a diminished chord. What's the big deal? But I want you to think of it as not an arpeggio or a chord. Think of it as a series of intervals, equal intervals. These are the kind of the default that we're gonna use to create a bunch of things, right? So what you can do, and I guess what he calls interpolation of one note, is that imagine you take these 4 notes and you attach a note to it, to each and one of those notes from a half step above, for example. And then I keep going from the B flat, half step, C sharp, half step, E, half step, G. And again, well, that's just the diminished scale, or the half whole scale. Yes, and what's happening when you're doing this, when you're dividing the octave into equal parts and adding notes to it like this, you're gonna find things that you recognize. Oh, that's the diminished scale, or that's the whole tone scale, or things are gonna pop up, which is interesting. So, but think of it more as intervals rather than a scale. We could also obviously do a whole step or above each note. So G to A, B flat to C, C sharp to D sharp, E, F sharp. Same thing here, it's just a diminished scale, right? The whole half. Again, try to think of it as those 4 notes with an interval. You can even go like this, right, to make that more obvious. Play them as actual do you call it? Double stops. Or an octave higher, perhaps. Still a diminished scale, it's just I'm thinking of it in a different way, right? And one thing you'll notice is that when you increase this interval that I'm adding to the 4 notes, every other time it's going to be the half whole scale alternating the whole half scale. I think you see what I mean. So the next interval would be a minor third. If I attach a minor third to every note, it's redundant because it's the same note. You get this. So it's redundant. But a major third, really interesting. You might want to do 2 octaves. Now you get into kind of hip sounds, like you get into Schofield territory. Mike Stern, it sounds kind of like something Mike Stern would play, or Michael Brecker. I'm going to show you a little bit later on what it sounds like with a vamp or a background, but moving kind of fast here. So, by the way, all of these are in the book, right? So, so far we played number 392 to 394. Example in the book 395 will be fourths. That would be a diminished sound, right? You could work over a diminished chord. Actually, I'll make a diminished vamp so you see what it sounds like. So this is a F sharp over G, which is kind of a diminished chord, right? Which is the whole half scale, and now the fourths. Those of you who have been following my lessons, you know that I like to play that, so you probably recognize that sound. I play that stuff all the time. I love that stuff, and yeah, it sounds kind of Mike Sterny. You can add more notes. Now we're at example 402 in the book. See where we are here. Okay, so just to give you an idea of what it looks like, and this is page 52 out of 255. It gets pretty crazy at the end here. Some really ridiculous stuff. But anyway, so now we're at attaching 2 notes. He calls it ultrapolation of 2 notes. I'm not sure what that term means, to be honest, but an example would be going up a fourth and down a minor second. Then do that from every note. Right? It sounds like a bebop lick. Right? And so that's brings me to why we're using this book, well, you can use this stuff as a way of creating licks and lines and even for composing, right? So maybe let's say you like that lick, which you just played. Then you can create lines and maybe that will become part of your vocabulary. And you hear this kind of stuff in players like Herbie Hancock and Michael Brecker. You can hear, I'm not sure if they studied from this book, but a lot of famous jazz musicians have, and you can hear that kind of stuff in their playing, right? So then you can also use it for ear training and for technique, working on your technique. Some of these exercises, or they're not exercises, but some of these patterns or whatever are really demanding technically, right? So there are many uses for this book. Let's do another one. Let's do 404. Now going up a fifth and down a minor third. So that creates a triad, right? A G triad, B flat triad, D flat triad, E. Another thing that happens is that you really have to think. You have to really think where the next note is going and how the symmetry, how it all works and how the notes relate to each other, and it's a really, really good thing as well, because this kind of book can be very frustrating because it can be very grinding if you just go through all these exercises, right? Like it's a very daunting thing. So it can be very uninspiring, whereas it should be super inspiring. This book is incredible. But if you just go through, example 488, 489, you're kind of just going through the motions, and that can be frustrating, and you're just like, what's the point? So there is something beautiful about that he's actually exhausting every possible combination and every permutation imaginable. But it can all, for me, sometimes when I'm working on stuff like that, it feels like I'm just going through the motions and nothing sticks. So one thing you can do is like you put a little marker on the stuff that you like, and then you come back to it and try to create lines and licks and incorporate it into your vocabulary. Also, it's interesting, every now and then you will find a pattern that actually shows up in real music, right? So here is Shostakovich Prelude number 2. Then you can check it out and see that some of these patterns actually will be in real music. So where were we? Yeah, the triads. For some of you, you might have already know this stuff because just from working on diminished stuff. So, all right. One more thing before I get to the thing I was going to explain about opening up the sound. If you do 2 notes attached to these 4 notes, but it's a structure you can't find in the diminished scale, the half whole scale or the whole half scale. For example, a sus structure, like up a fifth and then down a second, like a sus structure. Then you're actually creating a 12-tone row. Well, it's not how 12-tone music is supposed to be composed, but it is a 12-tone row, right? So another thing here is like, I was working on this earlier and I noticed I really like this sound. So that might be an idea for a tune, but I'll play it an octave higher, I guess. So maybe I'll make a little G pedal. and just experiment with those sounds, right? That could be the idea for a tune, I think. So there are two ways you can go about that. You can be dogmatic about it and stay within that pattern, or you can use it as a way of going somewhere else. So maybe I was inspired by something that I got out of this book, but then it led me to a different avenue. So now let's go to page 100, where it gets really interesting. Same four notes, but spread out. So here, that's actually a closed position, right, of that chord, if you think of it as a diminished chord. If we spread out the notes in an open position, or an open voicing, we get this: G, E, C sharp, B flat. Sorry. Same notes, just in an open way. So everything I did earlier, I can do here. So the first thing I did was attaching a minor second, right? If I do that to this new division, I get this. Which might seem a little bit crazy, but it's very, very good to do this, because it opens up, obviously, the scale. So instead, because I noticed when I teach the half whole scale to students, they get kind of stuck, like, what is it? They can't break out of that scale. So this is an excellent way of it, like literally breaking out of that scale. So let's do some other intervals. Let's do fifth. Now you're getting into kind of Ben Monder territory, right? Could be something he would play. Sounds like Ben Monder to me. That could also be an idea for a tune, right? I mentioned earlier that this is really good for ear training. I mean, this is really good ear training. Can you sing that division of four notes? Dum, dum, da, ba, ba, do, ba. Pardon my voice. So if you think this whole thing is stupid and like, why would I play that? Sounds ridiculous. Well, you can use it as a ear training exercise. So the point is not that we're gonna play like that, right? It's like I keep saying this in my videos, but that's a kind of a stupid lick, if that was a lick. But the idea is to open our sense of the diminished sound and expanding on it and the fretboard and all the rest of it. So that's what we're doing. Let's do the triads as well. G triad, E triad, C sharp or D flat, B flat. I think it's a cool sound. So just to give you an idea of how crazy it can get, I'll show you a couple of crazy things. For example, pattern 565, which should give you an idea of how much stuff there is in this book. starting on C, it does something called a spiral. So going down a minor third, and then letting those two notes going in different directions. So he calls that a spiral. And then you do that in this pattern. Ah. Hell. What the hell? It's pretty crazy. Just to give you an idea of how much stuff there's in here. Another really crazy thing is that he takes an interval. We start on C, go up the smallest interval and then increase it every time. So a minor second, major second, minor third, major third, perfect fourth, tritone, fifth, and so on. That also creates a diminished, symmetrical diminished sound, right? It could be a symmetrical diminished lick. Again, it's like, it might seem a little bit weird and why, but like why do it? But it's, again, it makes you think about what is the next note. You pay close attention to what are the intervals you're playing and how do they relate to each other. And it's ear training, and it's, yeah, if you use it in that way, this book can be very inspiring. It's obviously one of the best books ever. So I hope you got something out of it, and I hope I didn't confuse it too much. And let me know in the comments if there was something you didn't understand, and I shall see you next time. Boom.